Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Paranormal Lens. I'm Jamie Widener. I'll be your host tonight, along with my co-host Chad Thomas, as always. Chad, what is happening in the world?
Let's see. We got about 3 inches of snow,
What?
maybe a little
Yeah,
bit
we
more
did.
here.
Oh, yeah, we did. And people lost their ever-loving minds today.
Yep,
You
they
know,
did not know how to
we're
drive.
in a place where it snows. It happens.
Uh-huh.
But we didn't have we had no significant snowfall last year, and I think people literally forgot how to deal with it. It's nuts.
Hey,
People are
Jamie,
all
you
over
know
the
how I deal
road.
with it, right?
What's that?
You know how I deal with it now, right?
Yeah, you let somebody else deal with it.
I don't have to shovel. I don't have to plow. I don't have to do any of that. I'm so happy
The
I don't
benefit
have
of
to
an
do that.
HOA right there. All right.
So, so what's going on?
I apologize, Chad. I'm losing your audio. So I'm
Oh,
turning you up and I'm sure I'm going to blast myself out. So folks, I'm going to apologize in advance. I might have some technical difficulties tonight. I spilt a good bit of this on my laptop right before we started as I went to reach for something. So I might be having some problems because Chad was perfectly clear a moment ago before we came on. So we'll try to get through this. Jack, you can hear me okay?
yeah, I can hear you fine. I
Okay, you
bumped
just
my
sound.
volume up a little bit, and trying to get rid of that echo. So
You don't like hearing me twice? Come on now.
I wasn't
Once
having
is
it. You were having it.
once isn't. It stopped. Go figure. Once is enough. Well, anyway, yeah, the snow happened, and we're still dealing with it. Of course, 3 inches of snow is a lot to move around, and it's not as much as other places in the world have gotten this week. Um, but here in South Central Pennsylvania, where that's like our average snowfall for the year, here we are, one snowstorm, and there's another one coming on Friday. So I guess we'll see. But yeah, that's been the story. And the interesting thing is, when it comes to episodes like this, we since we're on the internet, we don't need to worry about driving to see each other and getting to places. So the
Exactly.
show will go on.
And here
And,
we
and
are.
speaking of going on,
Uh-huh.
tonight our episode is a little unique. It is on the Aokigahara, which is also known as Japan's suicide forest. Um, you may ask, Jamie, why are we doing an episode on this and on Paranormal Lens? And I will do my best to explain that. But it's also a place in the world that has fascinated me for a long time because of the association with suicide in Japan, and it's a thing. So um, let's talk about it a little bit. Before we start, I want to say something, and I'll end with something else around this. But we try to have fun with all of our episodes. However, this episode is about suicide, which is something that should always be taken seriously. And the individuals who we come across who may exhibit stress and stressors of their lives that may be talking about taking their own lives, we should be listening. So I'll give some information on that at the end of the episode to wrap it up. But we're still going to try to have some fun with this. But this is a very serious topic, and I want to treat it as such. So disclaimer out of the way. So on the Japanese island of Honshu, which is the Big Island, and approximately 65 miles southwest of Tokyo, the big city, there is a place called the Aokigahara, also known as the Suicide Forest. This forest covers, if we go to the next slide, please. It covers 30 square miles and lies along the northwest base of Mount Fuji, uh, which is the big mountain, the iconic volcano mountain in Japan. It is locally known as the Jukai, which translate roughly to Sea of Trees, largely due to the density of the forest. Now you see Mount Fuji on the upper left. It stands out. It's huge. Because the forest has grown over lava fields from the Fuji eruption in 864 AD, many of the tree roots and the vegetation are above ground because there's not much soil there for things to grow on. So it gives the forest an uncommonly eerie appearance. And aside from that, here you're seeing some of the natural beauty. There are lakes, there are lots of deciduous trees. It's a forest like any forest anywhere else in the world. Nothing exceptional or unique about it that would set it apart or cause the phenomenon that's happening there to be regularly reoccurring. But there is a reason. I'll try to explain. So, due to its desolate location, many deaths have been attributed to ubaste, which is a form of euthanasia for leaving the elderly or those unable to care for themselves alone in the forest to die. It is an act that would reduce the financial burden on a household, i.e., less mouths to feed, people to care for. Um, and while it's a very unlikely thing to be done today, it was common as recently as the end of World War II during the reconstruction phase of Japan after our bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima and the aftermath of World War II in general. It's debatable whether it's still happening today, but I can imagine it might still be. The popularity of the forest for suicides expanded after the release of a book called Nami no To, which is translated to Tower of Waves by a gentleman, and I'm going to say a lot of bad things here as far as my translation of Japanese, so I apologize in advance. This gentleman's name is Shicho Matsumoto. This book came out in 1961. The key factor of this book that has drawn and it was very successful, but it was very popular in Japan, but it features a lovelorn heroine who commits suicide in this forest. So it is a work of fiction. However, fiction becomes fact and facts become fiction. It is something where it has stuck and individuals are coming to the forest. Also, in a separate book, a gentleman named Wataru and Tsrumi Smari, I believe, named the forest as the perfect place to die in his complete manual of suicide, which was published in 1993. So something fairly recent that has again reignited, almost 30 years later, 32 years later, reignited the lore of the Aokigahara to draw people to it for suicide. So some statistics about this. On average, up to 105 bodies are found each year. And since records have been kept, the least number has been 30, and the most is 108. So the average is high, but it's not the highest, but it's pretty steep. It is the world's second most popular suicide destination, and the number one is the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco here in the U.S. And the rate there is something 120 people a year. So it's close to being number one, which is not a good thing, of course. And the practice of seppuku, which is honorable suicide, is attributed to going back to the samurai era in Japan's feudal times. So the concept of suicide in Japan in the culture does not carry the same stigma as it does in other parts of the world, where it's kind of a shameful thing. Here in Japan, it's what people do when it's the right thing, and that's interesting. It's a philosophy and a very uncommon one for us here in the U.S. Hanging is the most common suicide method. Empty nooses are commonly found in the trees for those passing through the forest. Not necessarily near trails in common populated areas, but as you drift into the backwoods, if you will, or off the trails, you're possibly going to find anything there. The second is jumping from high places. There are many bridges going over creeks and rivers, and there are screens, of course, on these areas to keep people from climbing and doing so, but it is the second most. And the third is self-poisonings or overdoses. They're very prevalent as well. So no sign of distress. The person is just found deceased without any trauma. Interestingly, March is the month with the most suicides. This coincidentally ties in with Japan's fiscal year ending. So those who might have had going back, to the concept of taking one's life to make the place a better situation for someone else might be somebody who's fallen into financial distress or ruin. So quite interesting there. Of the 105 average, those are only the bodies that are found. The odds are there are many more. The forest is very dense and making it impossible, as you can see from some of these pictures. It's very, very hard to confirm that every body or every victim is found out there. There have been annual searches to look for bodies since 1970, and search teams are made up of law enforcement officers, forest workers, and volunteers. If or when a body is found, forest workers are tasked with removing it. And I think it's interesting that it's not done by law enforcement. I think of like some forensic work that would be done here, trying to understand more what happened. It's just such a commonality there and such an accepted practice that they simply remove the body to take it for interment somewhere else. To further discourage suicides, the local government stopped publishing the annual number of bodies found in 2004. And the forest patrols actually didn't start, which are very common now with random people. That's the wrong way to say that. Groups randomly patrolling the forest, trying to see if they can come across someone. They started in 2009. So once the count stopped, the patrol started. Also trying to be a deterrent against individuals who come out to commit suicide. Anyone who clearly does not appear to be there for a hike or to observe nature are approached. So the idea that if you're there, just there, you're probably not there to be out for a stroll or enjoying the woods. You're there to commit suicide. So folks approach you to let you know you're not alone. If visiting, you may not find a body, but you're likely to find personal effects. We'll show some of these a little later. But these are things that are left behind by someone who has committed suicide. Personal effects such as backpacks, clothing, shoes, and camping gear, such as tents and sleeping bags, are commonly found with no one there to claim them. There was a bit of a controversy a few years ago, and fortunately, it's no longer available to view. But YouTuber Logan Paul, you may know him from the boxing world. He's a social media guy. Him and his brother. They're big on social media. He was in the Aokigahara, and he posted a video of a body that he found. It's someone who was still hanging, swaying on a noose. And it was millions of views, of course, because it's very sensational. The problem is that it showed the face and the body of the victim, and Mr. Paul was recorded laughing at the situation. If you go to YouTube and type in Logan Paul and Aokigahara, you can still see some of the video, and it's clear that he's tickled by it, which is disgusting. I don't recommend you watch it, but hey, it's the world we live in. The thing about this, while he was aiming for sensationalism, what it wound up costing him was sponsorship, and eventually his preferred status on Google was removed because of the situation. So. Sometimes it's not always a good thing to post everything, and in some respect, that should have been shown wasn't. So, hope you learned this lesson. And I do believe there was a formal apology presented, but well after the fact. So, in the spirit of trying to reduce those coming to the forest to commit suicide, there are signs at all of the entrances, and you saw some of these a couple slides ago, that are reminding visitors that their lives are precious, and to think of others if contemplating suicide. The signs include comments such as, please reconsider, and think carefully about your children and family. And a suicide prevention number is posted at the bottom of each sign. And my Japanese is very bad, but that's what it says, I swear.
You're not going to read it, Jamie?
I'm not even going to try. Yeah, and I don't say that with respect. There's no way. So, you're wondering, why are we here, right? And because there are so many people who have passed in the forest, and the potential for paranormal activity, there are claims, regular claims of paranormal activity, and the Aokigahara is reportedly haunted by spirits who are unable to enjoy peace in the afterlife. The forest is considered to be haunted by demons, which can cause people to commit suicide. When people become disoriented and lost in the forest, it is believed to be the work of eerie, which are ghosts, and they are the spirits of those left in the forest to die who did not want to leave. So going back to the concept of a loved one being left behind, usually an elderly or infirmed individual, they weren't there by choice. The suicide or the death was not their choice. It wasn't not by suicide. So their claim is they haunt the forest and looking for their way home to be back with their loved ones. This one really interests me because there's a lot of There's a lot in the Japanese culture around this, but the forest is also believed to be occupied by Tengu, a mythical Japanese man-bird demon. And there is a ton of art, both in sculpture and paint, in all kinds of different medium around this. The origin story states that Tengu fell to earth in a meteor of fire and was a mixture of human and canine features. Loosely translated, Tengu means heavenly dog. As centuries passed, the description changed from a human and dog mixture to a human and bird hybrid. Hence, you're seeing feathers on some of these images. They are believed to live in the trees in the mountainous areas of the country, thought to be the reincarnated spirit of an arrogant person. They're often depicted as winged creatures with long red noses or beak-like mouths. And if you'll go back in time with me a little bit here, when we discussed Jinn probably a few months ago by now, gosh, Chad, we've been at this a while. Tengu also have a hierarchy and are considered to be both good and evil. So depending on the personality and the traits of that particular Tengu, you may receive assistance while you're in the woods, and in other cases you may not. So, and the not might lead to your doom. So, it is interesting. It's another folklore situation, right? Because the idea of we have to associate certain things, but this is a nature tie-in as well. To the natural environment. You're never alone as well. So some of the other interesting things that are not creepy nor paranormal about the Aokigahara, compasses behave strangely inside the forest. And this is largely due to the fact that there aren't deposits in the lava that incorporates most of the forest floor. Electronic devices like handheld cell phones and GPS devices are also challenged due to the density of the forest. So there's just a lot of canopy in the trees, and therefore signals don't get through as clearly. And anybody who's been out in the middle of nowhere, even though we're only 65 miles from Tokyo, you're still in a pretty dense area. So things may not work well, which leads to lore. Malfunctioning compasses lead to many getting lost and having difficulty finding their way out of the forest. This also adds to the mystique. Once you get lost somewhere, you're kind of scared and isolated. So the story starts swelling. Hikers are suggested to stick to pre-established trails, obviously for safety and nothing more. There are also, and I'll get to this in a moment, but there are also some things out there that can hurt you. Believe it or not, you can camp in the forest. Whether you want to or not, it's a whole other thing. But police consider those who are bringing tents as someone who is considering suicide, but is unsure if they will go through with it. And as a result, campers will likely be approached by either the police or a suicide prevention patrol, and they will be encouraged to leave. So, the idea that is, it's such a prevalent thing that people come into the Aokigahara to commit suicide, that if you're there beyond just a casual walkthrough or the obvious hiking situation, you're going to get approached by somebody. And especially if you're looking like you're staying. So due to the density of the trees and the thickness of the forest, it is a surprisingly quiet place. The high density of the forest also makes cell service and spotty and challenge GPS systems, but people will also leave colored tape around trees. And we have a slide of this a while back. We don't have to go back to it to show a pathway of the way back. Not uncommon the way we mark trails here. You may find a ribbon around a tree or a tree branch to mark the trail when it's not cut clearly. Or you may see spray paint on trees, that are established trailheads and the trail paths. Obviously the goal once you go into the woods is to make your way back out for most, and certainly for those who are not there to commit suicide. I alluded to this a second ago, but there's a lot of natural wildlife out there in the woods. It's the home to 9 species of butterflies, so it's a very pretty thing, as well as fox, deer, rabbits, and squirrels. The most significant risk to humans is the Asian black bear. Obviously here in the northeast parts of America, we have plenty of brown bear and some others that are out there in the woods. Never go out without considering that you might see or come across wildlife that can harm you. There are many scavengers as well, such as buzzards, who often find the bodies of those who've committed suicide before the forest workers or even visitors do. So again, it's hard to tell that the count, the accuracy of the counts that are done, even though they're not published, they're still done. The measurements kept. It's hard to tell it's really an accurate number because there's not always a body to be found or a clear body to be found. There are other things to do though while you're there. One of the cool things is the Lake Sai Bat Cave. It's the largest cave in the Aokigahara, and it's over 1,268 feet long, and it is a popular tourist destination. Of course, bats are cool, right, Chad?
I don't mind bats, but
we know a guy who loves bats. Mm-hmm. So, but with that, if you're not a biologist, it's still a pretty cool thing to see.
I also know a lot of people who would have nothing to do with something like that.
Agreed. Right. And I when I read this and thinking about it, I went back to our trip to West Virginia Penitentiary. We were out in the chapel, and the world's biggest bat was out there, flying about 3 inches over our heads.
I don't think that was the world's biggest bat, Jamie. I hate to tell you.
Wait, what?
That was not the world's biggest bat.
It sure was, dude. Well, all right, maybe not the world's biggest bat. We talked about some of that a few weeks ago with the Jersey Devil, but it's the biggest bat I've ever seen. So I'll go there. Let's leave it at that.
It was an experience.
Wow. Hope that guy found his way out. There's also a natural cavern called the Naruwasa Ice Cave. And this is really interesting because inside the cave, the average temperature is 37.4 degrees Fahrenheit all year long. So you have the idea that you have, something uniquely different, and it's a great, again, tourist destination. Mm-hmm. So let's go to the next slide. So a couple of things here, people's, again, remnants of individuals. Next slide. So the hiker, the average person out in the woods, you certainly may come across things. I think it's safe to say that the odds are there that you will. Especially, a couple feet off the average trail. The deeper you go into the woods, of course, the more opportunities you may come across. Next slide, please. People do remember those who have left. And so I again, this was an episode for me of interest because of this location and the hearing of it and knowledge of it. And it's a dynamic thing. But it's also a very serious topic. So in closing, I want to share this. Excuse my cough. Suicide is the leading cause of death in the U.S. and is a major public health concern. When a person dies by suicide, the effects are felt by family, friends, and communities. Suicidal thoughts or actions are a sign of extreme distress and a clear indicator that someone needs help. Talking about wanting to die by suicide is not a typical response to stress. All talk of suicide should be taken seriously. It requires immediate attention and action. Next slide, please. So there are resources. If there is a direct emergency, always call 911 first. In the U.S., the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is available 24/7, 365 at 1-800-273-TALK, T-A-L-K, or 8255. Pardon me. It's also available at 1-800-SUICIDE. The Suicide and Crisis Lifeline can be reached by texting 988 and is also available 24/7, 365. Locally, wherever you are in the U.S., you can contact 211. And much like 911 is for emergencies and 411 is for information, and even 811 is available if you want to dig in your yard, let you know where the underground power lines and resources are. 211 is a National Health and Human Services hotline and can be reached simply by dialing those three numbers, 211. And you will get connected to the resource center that's closest to your dialing location. And, excuse me, I'm so sorry. This resource has a database of all of the health and human service needs and resources that are in the area that you're calling from. And a huge asset that most people don't even know about. It's a best kept secret kind of thing. If you or someone you know are considering suicide, please know there's always help. Someone will listen, understand, and offer help to you or those who need it. And in the last part of this, additional resources are available from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Suicide Prevention Resource Center, the National Institute for Mental Health, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. This was a personal episode for me, and this is a surprise for Chad perhaps, but there was a time in my life when I was pretty low and I considered suicide, and I had someone there to help me and listen and lift me up. And I hope if anyone's listening to this, they have that situation, that someone is there for them. These resources are great, but you have a friend, and you always have me. You can find me here. So, okay, I'll try not to well up anymore. And Chad,
Yes, sir.
talked about the Aokigahara. Let's get back to that.
Yeah. It's wow. Really interesting. Jumping back to it's beautiful.
Yeah,
Like, so I mean, I understand why, if that's a cultural way, an acceptable cultural way to pass on, why you would want to do it here. Again, not that I'm condoning or anything like
yeah.
that, but I mean, it's just it's gorgeous. Um,
It speaks to me. It speaks to some of the power that words have.
mhm,
The idea that it's some of, at least, of the draw is attributed to um, some books. Um, the Tower of Waves. It's interesting. And then I never would have thought there was a complete manual to suicide
right.
out there in the world. Wow.
Hmm.
I guess it makes sense. There's something for everybody, right?
Hmm.
But the idea of the romanticism of it is interesting. But there's a lot of power in words, and
Yeah.
you can visualize things. And looking at this, if you're on Honshu, and you're anywhere, it's not that far to get anywhere on the island, I guess,
Right.
within reason. So, to get here, and everybody knows Mount Fuji in Japan. So, it's a um, ritualistic location, with a whole history of its own. Maybe another episode, perhaps. But the idea of finding this location really isn't that challenging. Um,
Right.
so getting there, and it's available by rail, it's available by car. So getting out to it isn't challenging, as far as it's not like the middle of nowhere. Again, it's not far from some major civilization locations,
Right.
population density locations. So,
But at the
um,
same time, it is because you're so remote once you're
but
there.
it's
And I
amazing,
mean,
right? How you can get there. I
and
think,
I think it's, you were talking about lack of cellular, lack of GPS because of the canopy density, but isn't that great that there are places that you can get away, and
yeah,
they're not cutting down a whole bunch of trees to put a cell tower up so you can get cell reception in
yeah,
this
that is
beautiful
true. I laughed at
national.
that because it is great to get away from these things.
um,
We come from a generation that didn't have them, so we understand what it's like.
right.
Um, yeah, you're right. And I was just thinking, we talked last week. I expressed about living in Phoenix, and
Hmm.
being able to go around or through the passes of South Mountain and getting out to the desert, in a half hour, 40 minutes away from the city. Phoenix is the
Right.
fifth largest city in the U.S.
Hmm.
There's people everywhere, but you can go relatively quickly to get to the middle of nowhere too. Now you'll have
Right.
reception and all that stuff. Don't be wrong, but just the idea of getting away from the the bustle, for lack of a way of calling it,
Hmm.
of people and the mass of people, is really just so very cool. It makes sense.
So yeah, but tying this back to the paranormal side, I would
Yeah,
think with everything that has happened here, I mean, culturally, it's it, the, if there wasn't paranormal activity, I would be shocked.
right.
It's just some of the Birdman. I don't know
Tengu.
how much of
Yep.
that I believe, but
Sure.
yeah, I'm sure there's other spirits there. It's just so yeah, there would be paranormal activity. Um, I don't. I hate to say haunted, but you know,
Right.
you know, definitely would think that there's paranormal activity and definitely spirits residing there, and again, why wouldn't you? Like if you had a choice, of places to hang out, it's a beautiful place.
It really is. And
Um,
that's really interesting. Like we talk about this, in investigations, spirits, um, at the brewery specifically,
hmm
there are people there who aren't associated by family, to the Booby family that we know are there. Um, and why are they there? And I do believe there's some choice in this. There's some nearness and dearness, perhaps. Um, it's like we when we did our episode on Hanscroft Cemetery. It doesn't make sense to me that cemeteries are haunted. People didn't die there; they're interred
right,
there. You know,
right.
um, and maybe so. I don't know. Maybe someone near and dear is there, and someone else comes there because of the concept of their physical body being there. But if we are true energy and we have some concept of um, self will to go where we want to in the afterlife, then I don't think I'd be hanging out in the cemetery unless my goal was to scare people. Um,
Yeah, and
and me,
yeah,
maybe I
that's not
would.
me. So,
It's probably me. Let's be honest. But um, the idea that you would go to a place that was near to you or beautiful like
right.
this is certainly makes sense.
hmm
You know, or go back to a place that you enjoyed and a time that you enjoyed as well.
hmm
Makes total sense to me. So yeah, I agree. I think there has to be something happening there. Um, the isolation makes it challenging to do investigations, of course, but I'm sure if I dug deep enough, I'm sure someone has done so. Um,
Well, and
and
not only the
curious.
isolation, but the vastness of it. Like, where do you pick to investigate?
Yeah,
Because it is such a it's such a big area. You can't cover the whole thing.
yeah, 30
So
kilometers is pretty big. In the square kilometers is pretty big space. Um, and the idea then too is everything and this is like off gridding, right? You go
hmm
camping, you take everything with you need. If you're going to go to investigate, you have to carry everything in with you. So that may challenge the distance that you're willing to proceed,
right,
to get to a spot. Um, I think it would take some intentional activity, and obviously there are trails. Don't get me wrong. So you could roll stuff in if you had to. But
right,
again, if you're there, and you're found, you're going to be encouraged to leave.
right.
So, the idea there is there that I think that adds to some of the tranquility as well. There's not just people everywhere all the time.
Right. Did anybody out there have thoughts on this? You feel free to drop them in the chat.
Yeah,
Um, Jamie loves questions,
you do actually.
so.
I'm usually the one asking all the questions. So
hmm Um, but it's nice. It's nice to see that people are memorialized a little bit. Some of the pictures that you shared, um, that there are memories for people there. So,
yeah,
um, yeah, I think there's a lot there. I mean, there's a lot to dig into with that one. Um, just I wouldn't know where to start.
it's a place I'd like to go. Like I know, everybody has a bucket list of things. Mine's loaded with paranormal stuff as much as regular stuff.
hmm
The travel in the world. This is one of those places that I would like to get to at someday, somehow, some way.
hmm
Um, and just to truly see it for myself, to understand how truly vast it is, and
Right.
soak all that beauty in.
hmm
But it's also serious. It goes both ways. It's solemn. Todd, we were discussing the Aokigahara, which is Japan's suicide forest, um, and the um, the idea here, not the idea, the facts are that up to 105 people are found every year on average who have committed suicide in the forest. As a quick recap, and it is um, it is not encouraged to be within the forest. If you're there beyond, in the evenings or trying to camp over, you'll be approached by patrols encouraging you to leave. It has become such a noted location for those coming to take their own lives. That it's meant to, and signs are every entrance area. There are signs encouraging you not to, and providing resource information not to.
Yeah.
So
Heather has a
quite a
question
curious
about
thing.
elementals.
Yeah, Heather, that's a great question. I would have to think so. There's a vast bit of nature to cover. The 34 kilometers is a large territory. I can only imagine there has to be, in the vastness of the forest, there definitely should be, as we know it. But nothing that I've come across directly, other than the concept of spirits of those who have passed, trying to find their way home, and the Tengu, which could fall in that direction, I guess, depending on your perspective.
I mean,
Perspective.
I mean, the Tengu could be a way to explain elementals that people didn't
Yes,
understand
exactly.
originally.
Yep,
So, so yeah, it's a good possibility.
I think so too. And the ideas of, even here in the U.S. with Native American lore, a lot of times the stories that have become folklore are meant to explain natural occurrences, but sometimes also unnatural, or supernatural occurrences that someone may have come across. Sure, things, the concept of whisper down the lane may apply to certain things as it's passed down generationally, especially with those with oral history only.
Mm-hmm.
The story can change through time, and it will. It's just a natural occurrence. But the idea that it came from something is still the point, the baseline of it. And it was definitely an occurrence of something. Yeah, that's a great question, and I would have to imagine there is a lot of energy there, especially with and we're talking a timeline, from 1961 to present. As far as the sensationalism, the romanticism, if you will, of the forest for suicides, it likely occurred earlier than that. There is a concept of ubasute, which is the practice of leaving an elderly or infirmed individual in the woods alone to pass, to reduce burden on the household. That goes back into pre-World War II era, certainly back a lot further probably than that. That's when they first started noting it, and reading up on it. So, you're talking of 2 or 3 generations now of just that timeline, of energy of those who have passed there. So yes, I would think so. Um, Not having been, unfortunately, I can't verify or validate, but I logically it takes me there too. Being a paranormal investigator, I would think so. And it's a big area. I keep saying this over and over again, I guess, but it was, with that, obviously, I think there might be pockets or spots of more activity or energy than others.
Todd's got some good thoughts here.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great question. Great thought. And I think that is true. Something that I alluded to is there are spirits. Let me get the right word here. My Japanese is very rusty. Or it's not rusty. It's poor. But there are yurei. That's spelled Yurei. A Japanese translation, ghosts. That are known to haunt or believed to haunt the forest, and looking for a way home. So they make contact with those who are in the forest as well. So the the idea would be that, yeah, I think so.
It's a heavy subject, Jamie, but you did
It
a
is.
really
It
good
is.
job with
It
it.
is.
And I think you handled it very well. So,
Well, thanks.
yeah.
The key thing is, there are resources prevalent there, on the ground as you approach each entrance to the forest, and everything. The trailheads are clearly marked, and we showed those slides, some of them anyway. And people still go to commit suicide. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and again, as a cultural thing, like a better way of saying thing, it sounds hard. I'm sorry. Uh, but as a cultural situation, the difference is that it's acceptable. in Japan, where we may look upon it much differently in the U.S. There is a huge stigma here, perhaps other parts of the world as well, the Western world. But the idea that it is acceptable is probably not even the right word, but it's so normalized because it happens so often. And if it happens here, I would have to imagine it happens elsewhere as well. It's just not as notable. But it is part of the normalized culture of Japan. It's a great question, Bert. I did see that there has been evidence of individuals coming from elsewhere as well. So it is not just exclusively a Japanese thing, but it's not as common that there are travelers, or tourists, or there's a word for that, and I'm just totally lost me. People from out of the country, but tourist doesn't sound right. No, those are people from the country live elsewhere. Okay. It's like if a certain presidential candidate wins, you're going to leave the country. Remember a lot of people said that. They never left, but if they did, they would be expats or expatriates, because they're elsewhere now, but from here. There's a term. I'm sorry, it's just lost on me. That's all right. Yeah, Todd, you're right. It's a heavy subject, and I appreciate y'all for letting me ramble through it. And thanks, Jed, as well. I know you didn't know what I was going to do here, so I appreciate it.
Yep. Do you have any final wrap-up thoughts on this, Jamie?
What I said in my closing comment. I mean, there are resources. And if we know someone, and this is one of those things where it's just so important that we're listening to each other. We're paying attention to each other. They're not always clear-cut signs, but they're there. And this is why it's important to hug the ones we love. And we have made our lives so busy, and we have made our lives so full of things that sometimes the most important things, which are the ones we love, are kind of slid aside or left behind a little bit in the focus. So please know that if you or anyone you know is considering suicide, there are tons of resources. Know the signs and make the calls. And get the help that's needed. Every person is precious.
And like you said, Jamie, you're always there. I'd be happy to talk to somebody.
Absolutely. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, since we're talking about that part of the world, let's jump to what's coming up next.
This is a great segue, but you handled that very well. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm gonna next week do the dragon. I changed the name to the dragon's triangle. We'll throw that question up in a minute.
So you got to share this because this is hysterical.
Go ahead.
So, yeah, Heather, because no one warned us either. That's why we were not the first group to go into the chapel that night. And so, yeah, it is not a spite makes right thing at all, I promise. But honestly, I was hopeful it would find its way out because it certainly was trying to. But it was trapped in the room behind the chapel to where the stairs go up to the second floor, doing some kind of a circuit around there.
Yeah.
I swear the thing was huge. It was the Jersey Devil, I swear. Not personal, I promise.
Yeah. So, we had a lot going on that night. Melissa was getting run over. Well, never gonna let Chris down. Let that one down.
It's true. It's so true. Oh my gosh, I forgot about it. But yeah, you're right. That was not too far before that.
Todd's throwing a couple of things up there. Todd, I'm just going to say I think we all know somebody who's been in that situation, and we wish we could have helped. We just didn't understand what they were asking for.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's important just to be there for the people who we understand what they're asking for. So I've had the same situation. There have been people that I have been there for and been able to help, and then there's other people that they made the decision and they had already made that decision. So
Yeah.
so um, yeah, just be there for those who you can, and hug your friends, hug your kids, and all that stuff. So
Absolutely.
anyway, jumping back to the what's coming up. I'm doing the Dragon's Triangle. It goes by a couple names. I had Devil's Triangle. Then I looked at some other things that Devil's Triangle is, and you can Google it, Jamie. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna go into the detail there.
This feels like I should be doing it when the kids aren't around. Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
All right.
And then the episode dedicated to Bert is coming up. Ley lines.
Yep. Ley lines.
Then I'm gonna tackle telekinesis. My pen just moved on my desk, Jamie. How'd you do that? And then we're gonna do Champ.
Yep.
And
just for the record, Champ is not like the guy who won a title or something. It is the cryptid living in Lake Champlain on the U.S.-Canadian border, just north of where we are. So
I don't have it listed there. I don't have it listed there, but February 20th, which is right around President's Day, I'm going to try to do the haunts of the White House. See what I can find on that. So
yes,
I think
awesome.
that'll be interesting because that's one of those that every paranormal investigator would love to do, but will never get to do.
Never get a chance. Yep. Although I know somebody who was just there a couple weeks ago and actually got the full tour and got a picture with the president with his family. So it's really cool. Pretty exciting.
So,
if I'd only known, he slipped a K2 in his pocket.
Yeah. That's what's coming up on the show.
Good stuff.
Jamie, this weekend, finally.
Finally, I know, right? I'm going to say something, and I mean this to say with as much love as I possibly can, but it was nice to have a bit of a break between Christmas and now. For a lot of us to recharge and reinvigorate, and get some of the stuff, out of the way that we needed to get to, like rest. So, and try out some new equipment we got at the holidays prior to getting live with it. So, but it's time to get back to work. It really is. Looking forward to it.
Todd, I'm glad to hear you're planning on making a trip out here.
Very cool.
Ron and Lourdes are definitely going to be there. I forget. Well, we have the date.
It's in October.
It's in October.
Say it's October 19th, I believe.
Right, but they may get out here before that. They're trying to set up a time separate from Daryl, I believe. Okay. So we'll see. I'm actually going to see them this weekend, if everything goes right. If I don't get snowed out, they are down. Yeah. I'll give it a shout out. They are down in Virginia at the Hanover Paracon with our buddy Steve Dills, who was on with us a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
Ron and Lourdes will be there. A bunch of other things. I'm going down for the Friday night event with Ron and Lourdes, but all day Saturday is the Paracon. I think it's like $10 to get in the Paracon.
Yeah, it's really reasonable. And a good lineup.
Yeah. And then they have an investigation that night that covers the entire courthouse complex, which is the tavern, the courthouse, the jail, the library. There's a whole bunch of buildings that are available. Todd may go down Saturday for that. If you do, Todd, let us know. Like I said, I'm not going to be there Saturday. We have an investigation back at the brewery Saturday night that I want to be back for since it's the first one of the year. But yeah, it's going to be a great time. There's only 11 tickets left for the brewery one this weekend. But there's plenty of opportunities coming up. So that's that. Then here's our socials.
Yeah. So we're out there. Come find us. Give us a like. Give us a drop in. And we need to. Well, obviously, with getting out with more investigations, we'll get some material out there too. Some fresh content coming soon. So more to look forward to. as well as us here every Tuesday evening. So please come back.
So, Jamie, I'm teaming up with Chris again in a couple weeks. Chris
I
Mendez.
heard. I heard.
I'm excited to go back to the Clifton for a 2-night investigation.
That's cool.
Um, and then we'll see what happens. But he's been putting together videos and
Mhm.
presentations, so there may be some airing of that. I'm not going to go into details. I don't want to
All right.
surprise, take away Chris's stuff, but
Sure. That's good
it'll
stuff
be
too.
it'll be fun.
Just be careful. Don't get too close to him in case he runs.
Yeah, we definitely don't want that. So it's a small team,
Yeah.
so it'll be good.
I think having been to the Clifton Theater in Huntington, correct? Huntington, PA.
Correct. Yep.
Having been there, done that, I think a small team is probably appropriate. Yeah, smaller team anyway.
Thanks, Todd. Yep.
Yeah, have a great night. Thanks, buddy. The theater is just that right size that a small team really can hit it pretty hard. And there's enough separation with the theaters and all that too. But just that's cool, really cool. I'm happy to hear you're making it out there. Yeah, one of my favorite places too. I enjoyed our time there.
Definitely. So
just hope it's not foggy on the way home.
I think I'm spending the night.
Oh, good. Yeah. This is wise advice.
We can't both
watch your head under the stage. Bert still has a lump on his. Oh, dude. They're going to charge you for fixing the stage, by the way. A great place.
Yeah. So, and our friend Ariel's still there.
Okay.
So
Well, good.
She's really excited about the group coming out. So.
Well, and the goal is to save the Clifton. So these events, on top of being an active five screen theater, these events really help them to keep the place running. It's an ancient old building. It's got all the problems that an old place has. So having a paranormal presence really helps offset some of the costs and help make the cost control manageable, because they just need all the help they can get. So if you ever get a chance to get out to Huntington, check out the Clifton, go see a show, and stay. They do a lot of that too. Actually, they'll show a movie, then have an investigation behind it. So they do some fun stuff. They really do. Good job out there, guys. Shout out to them.
So. All right, Jamie. Any final thoughts?
Saturday can't come fast enough.
No, it can't. So.
I'm really excited. So let's get back to the brewery. Get back to it. And then we'll have more to share next week. Obviously, your trip down to the Hanover Tavern Friday evening, our investigation Saturday. We'll have some cool stuff to share and at least discuss. I'm sure we won't have time to get the evidence review in the window, but we'll hopefully have some stuff to share about what's going on and a really cool topic to talk about too. The Dragon's Triangle.
I'm going to throw this up one last time before we roll out of here.
Okay.
So, everybody, thank you. Did you have anything else, Jamie, as I wrap this up for you?
No, the last thing I'd say is, obviously weather is upon us, so everybody be safe out there in the world. Give yourself some extra time getting where you're going. Nothing's worth it than your safety. So, please check the weather and drive safe, and come see us when you can. Yep. We'll see you next week.
So, and Jamie, thank you one more time for taking this on and doing it professionally.
Of course.
Your best.
Pleasure. It's mine. It's all mine.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Take care, all.
Good night.